I walked into that shelter with a clear vision, a strong, high-energy German shepherd to fit my idea of the perfect companion. But as I roamed the aisles filled with barking, jumping dogs, I stumbled upon something unexpected. A massive Boerboel named Atlas, hunched in the corner of his kennel, utterly defeated. I know what you're thinking. Boerboels are fierce, intimidating, and not the kind of dog to take lightly. They conjure images of lion hunters and unyielding guardians, the kind of breeds that command respect and sometimes fear. Yet there he was, this giant of a dog, not growling or lunging but sitting in complete silence, his head hung low, eyes vacant as if he had forgotten what it meant to hope. Before we get deep into the story, please let me know in the comment where you're watching from. Hi, subscribe if you're hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, because tomorrow, I have another beautiful story to share with you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Now let's get into the story. I paused, my heart tugged by the sight of him. While families strolled past, eagerly eyeing the more acceptable breeds, Atlas remained invisible to them. His gray coat and white chest, once symbols of strength, now draped a body that seemed to carry the weight of the world. Something about that defeated posture felt achingly familiar, a reflection of my own struggles. I was supposed to be choosing a dog to fit my heroic image, but instead, I found myself drawn to this gentle giant whose spirit had been crushed. Yesterday had been straightforward, or so I thought. We had meticulously crafted our plans, filled out the adoption application weeks in advance, and read every article about German shepherds. How intelligent they are, how they require constant stimulation, how they can be headstrong and stubborn. We were ready and excited, with a name picked out and toys purchased, a crate waiting by the window. But the moment I stepped into the chaos of the shelter, dogs barking, tails wagging, and eager paws scratching at kennel doors, I realized how naive my expectations had been. It was pure chaos, a cacophony of hope and longing, with every dog seemingly screaming, "Pick me! Pick me!" Except for Atlas. He was tucked away in kennel number 12, behind glass that hadn't been cleaned in ages, a stark contrast to the vibrant energy surrounding him. He didn't bark or pace, he simply sat there, a statue of muscle and sadness. I felt my resolve waver, my focus shifting from the strong, traditional choice I had envisioned to the fragile being in front of me. Atlas wasn't merely a dog, he was a mirror reflecting my own fears and insecurities. I couldn't look away. Something deep inside me urged me to understand his story, to uncover why this magnificent creature had been so thoroughly overlooked. At that moment, I began to realize that my quest for a perfect dog might just lead me to the one who needed saving the most. As I settled into my new routine with Atlas, I felt a nagging curiosity about the Boerboel breed and the heavy history that lay behind this gentle giant. I had entered the shelter with preconceived notions about dogs and their roles, strength, loyalty, and a certain bravado that I believed a German shepherd would embody. But Atlas challenged everything I thought I knew. His presence was a stark reminder that beneath the surface of any creature, there is a story waiting to be told, a history that shapes who they are. The Boerboel, I learned, was bred in South Africa as a protector, a guardian of homesteads and livestock against the dangers of wildlife, including lions. These dogs were meant to be fearless, powerful, and resolute, their very existence tied to the rugged landscapes of their homeland. They were not just pets. They were once revered as the ultimate protectors of families and their property. But as the world evolved, so did the perception of this breed. Their immense size and strength, once celebrated, became a source of fear and misunderstanding. The very traits that made them guardians now painted them as threats in the eyes of many. Atlas, however, was not a lion hunter. He was a shadow of his breed's legacy, a ghost of the powerful protector he was born to be. As I watched him move through my home in the days following his adoption, I couldn't shake the feeling that he carried the weight of the world on his broad shoulders. He would often retreat to the corner of the living room, choosing the safety of solitude over the warmth of companionship. It was as if he had forgotten how to be the dog he was meant to be, a guardian, a friend, a partner. Instead, he seemed to embody the very essence of depression. I would sit on the floor, watching him, trying to understand the depth of his sorrow. His large, expressive eyes held a sadness that spoke volumes, a silent plea for help that transcended words. It was a stark contrast to the fierce image of the Boerboel I had imagined before meeting him. I began to realize that the lion hunter's ghost hovered in his demeanor, haunting him with memories of a life that had once held purpose. Here was a dog who had been stripped of his identity, forced into a silence that echoed through the empty spaces of my home. Research revealed that many Boerboels were abandoned or misunderstood, left to languish in shelters like Atlas. Their intimidating appearance often led to a cycle of fear and neglect, perpetuating a narrative that deemed them dangerous. It was a tragic irony that the very qualities that made them formidable protectors had turned them into pariahs in a world that had grown wary of their presence. Atlas was a casualty of this stigma, a gentle soul wrapped in a body that had become a mask of fear. I began to empathize with him, recognizing the parallels between his struggles and my own. Just as Atlas grappled with his identity as a Boerboel, I wrestled with my own expectations of strength and control. I had come to the shelter seeking a companion to embody my heroic ideals, but what I found instead was a reflection of my own vulnerabilities. Atlas's depression forced me to confront the darkness I had buried within myself, a realization that true strength lies not in the absence of fear, but in the courage to face it head-on. As I settled into my new routine with Atlas, I felt a nagging curiosity about the Boerboel breed and the heavy history that lay behind this gentle giant. I had entered the shelter with preconceived notions about dogs and their roles, strength, loyalty, and a certain bravado that I believed a German shepherd would embody. But Atlas challenged everything I thought I knew. His presence was a stark reminder that beneath the surface of any creature, there is a story waiting to be told, a history that shapes who they are. The Boerboel, I learned, was bred in South Africa as a protector, a guardian of homesteads and livestock against the dangers of wildlife, including lions. These dogs were meant to be fearless, powerful, and resolute, their very existence tied to the rugged landscapes of their homeland. They were not just pets, they were once revered as the ultimate protectors of families and their property. But as the world evolved, so did the perception of this breed. Their immense size and strength, once celebrated, became a source of fear and misunderstanding. The very traits that made them guardians now painted them as threats in the eyes of many. Atlas, however, was not a lion hunter. He was a shadow of his breed's legacy, a ghost of the powerful protector he was born to be. As I watched him move through my home in the days following his adoption, I couldn't shake the feeling that he carried the weight of the world on his broad shoulders. He would often retreat to the corner of the living room, choosing the safety of solitude over the warmth of companionship. It was as if he had forgotten how to be the dog he was meant to be, a guardian, a friend, a partner. Instead, he seemed to embody the very essence of depression. I would sit on the floor, watching him, trying to understand the depth of his sorrow. His large, expressive eyes held a sadness that spoke volumes, a silent plea for help that transcended words. It was a stark contrast to the fierce image of the Boerboel I had imagined before meeting him. I began to realize that the lion hunter's ghost hovered in his demeanor, haunting him with memories of a life that had once held purpose. Here was a dog who had been stripped of his identity, forced into a silence that echoed through the empty spaces of my home. Research revealed that many Boerboels were abandoned or misunderstood, left to languish in shelters like Atlas. Their intimidating appearance often led to a cycle of fear and neglect, perpetuating a narrative that deemed them dangerous. It was a tragic irony that the very qualities that made them formidable protectors had turned them into pariahs in a world that had grown wary of their presence. Atlas was a casualty of this stigma, a gentle soul wrapped in a body that had become a mask of fear. I began to empathize with him, recognizing the parallels between his struggles and my own. Just as Atlas grappled with his identity as a Boerboel, I wrestled with my own expectations of strength and control. I had come to the shelter seeking a companion to embody my heroic ideals, but what I found instead was a reflection of my own vulnerabilities. Atlas's depression forced me to confront the darkness I had buried within myself, a realization that true strength lies not in the absence of fear, but in the courage to face it head-on. As the days turned into nights, I made it my mission to break through the walls that Atlas had built around himself. I learned to speak his language, slow movements, gentle tones, and an unwavering patience that mirrored his own hesitance. I began to understand that the key to unlocking his spirit lay in creating a safe space where he could feel secure enough to emerge from the shadows. With each passing moment, I hoped to coax the lion hunter back to life, to help him reclaim the essence of who he truly was beneath the layers of hurt. In our quiet moments together, I found myself sharing my own fears, my own scars, offering him fragments of my soul in hopes that he would find solace in our shared vulnerability. I realized that in our journey together, we were not merely healing each other. We were forging a bond built on understanding and acceptance. As I reflected on the legacy of the Boerboel, I understood that Atlas was not just a ghost of his breed, but a reminder of the strength that exists within fragility. Together, we would navigate the terrain of our pasts, reclaiming the love and connection that had once felt so distant. The atmosphere inside the shelter felt charged with a mix of hope and trepidation as I stood at the front desk, clutching the adoption paperwork that would change my life. The staff had been friendly yet cautious, their smiles tinged with hesitation whenever I mentioned Atlas, the Boerboel I had set my heart on. "Are you sure?" they had asked, their tone laced with concern. "He's not like other dogs. He's been through a lot." Each warning felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, forcing me to confront the gravity of my decision. I understood their apprehension. Atlas was not the typical choice for a first-time dog owner. His size and past seemed daunting, a stark contrast to the German Shepherd I had envisioned. Yet, as I looked into the depths of his soulful eyes, I felt an undeniable connection that defied logic. The shelter staff, trained to assess risk and behavior, saw danger where I saw the flickering flame of potential. I was aware of the stigma surrounding Boerboels, the preconceived notions of aggression they carried, but my heart urged me to leap into the unknown. Perhaps it was faith, or a desperate need for redemption, that guided my hand as I signed the adoption papers. The moment I completed the paperwork, a rush of adrenaline surged through me, mingled with a sense of trepidation. I was officially committed to bringing Atlas into my life, yet the echoes of the staff's warnings lingered in my mind like a haunting refrain. I could feel the weight of their skepticism pressing down on my shoulders, but I pushed it aside, reminding myself that Atlas was not merely a statistic. He was a living creature longing for connection and companionship. As I gathered my belongings, I caught a glimpse of Atlas through the kennel window, his massive frame silhouetted against the stark lighting of the shelter. He sat quietly, waiting as if he understood the significance of the moment, and it filled me with determination. The walk to the parking lot felt like a pilgrimage, each step heavy with expectation and uncertainty. I could sense the staff watching me, their eyes filled with a mix of hope and doubt as I led Atlas out of the shelter. With every step, I grappled with the enormity of my decision. Would I be able to reach him? Would he accept me as his new companion? The questions swirled in my mind like a storm, but I forced myself to focus on the steady rhythm of my heartbeat, reminding myself that I was doing this for both of us. The cool air hit us as we stepped outside, a refreshing contrast to the sterile environment of the shelter. Atlas paused briefly, his nose twitching as he took in the new scents. I could see the tension in his body, a mix of curiosity and uncertainty, and I knelt beside him, offering gentle reassurance. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered, feeling the warmth of his massive form beside me. "We're in this together." The connection between us felt electric, a silent understanding that transcended words. As we made our way to the parking lot, I was acutely aware of the stares from passers-by. Some looked at Atlas with a hint of fear, their expressions betraying a preconceived narrative of danger. I felt a surge of protectiveness rise within me. Here was a dog who had been misunderstood, a creature of depth and sensitivity, reduced to a stereotype. I wanted to shout out to the world, to tell them that Atlas was more than just his imposing stature, that he was a gentle soul waiting for someone to believe in him. Finally, we reached my car, and I hesitated for a moment, the reality of the situation crashing down around me. How would he react to the vehicle? Would he be afraid? I took a deep breath, opening the back door slowly. Come on, buddy. Let's go home. Atlas approached cautiously, his eyes darting nervously as he sniffed the interior. Heart pounding, I stepped back, giving him space. I watched as he tentatively climbed inside, his massive body filling the seat. The sight of him there, this once ghostly figure now taking up space in my life, made my heart swell with a mix of hope and responsibility. As I climbed into the driver's seat, I felt a surge of emotion, a blend of excitement and anxiety. I glanced at Atlas in the rearview mirror, and for a fleeting moment, our eyes locked. In that instant, I saw a flicker of something, trust, perhaps? A promise that we would embark on this journey together, side by side, despite the challenges that lay ahead. This was the beginning of our story, and I was ready to embrace whatever it might hold. With a deep breath, I turned the key in the ignition, and we began our journey into the unknown, two souls bound together by fate and a leap of faith. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness as Atlas stepped into the house, the wooden floor creaking beneath his weight. He was a solid presence, a 150-pound mass of trepidation that loomed large in the dimly lit room. Shadows clung to the corners like forgotten memories, and the walls seemed to whisper secrets, urging him to turn back. Yet, he remained anchored in place, an immovable object in a landscape filled with uncertainty. His eyes swept over the space, absorbing the details, the peeling paint, the dust motes swirling in the faint light that filtered through grimy windows, the silence pressing down like a heavy blanket. Each minute ticked by with a relentless slowness, amplifying the tension that hung in the air. Atlas felt as though he were caught in a moment stretched thin, where time itself was hesitant to move forward. He recalled the stories he had heard about this house, tales steeped in dread and misfortune. Each one had colored his imagination, painting vivid pictures of what lay beyond those walls. Yet, standing there, he couldn't quite reconcile the weight of those stories with the reality before him. It was just a house, after all, a structure built from wood and stone. But it was more than that. It was a vessel of fear, and he was its reluctant occupant. Atlas tried to summon the courage to take a step forward, to break the spell of inaction that had ensnared him. But his feet felt glued to the floor, as if the very boards were conspiring to hold him back. What awaited him in the shadows? Were there ghosts lurking just out of sight, waiting to reveal themselves? Or perhaps it was only the echoes of his own anxieties that haunted him, whispering doubts that echoed off the walls. He shifted his weight, the movement small but significant. The sound of his heartbeat thundered in his ears, drowning out all other noise. It was a reminder of his own pulse, a signal that he was alive, yet it felt like a betrayal at that moment. Why was he here? What had driven him to this place of dread? He had imagined strength when he decided to come, yet now, he felt like a paperweight caught in a tempest. The silence wrapped around him, a cocoon of isolation that made him acutely aware of every breath he took. Atlas wanted desperately to scream, to shatter the quiet that pressed against him like a vice, but the very thought terrified him. What if the silence held answers he wasn't prepared to confront? What if it revealed truths about himself that he had long buried? He glanced toward the door, the way he had come, and for a fleeting moment he considered retreat. The outside world beckoned with its familiar rhythms, its cacophony of life that felt so far removed from this house. But in that corner, he was also aware that running away would only deepen the fear that already gripped him. It would become a part of him, an unwelcome companion that he would carry into every room of his life. With a deep breath, Atlas forced himself to look beyond the shadows, to challenge the grip of fear that had him ensnared. He understood then that the house was not solely a place of dread, it was also a crucible for change. This heavy silence was not just a barrier, it was an invitation to confront the unknown, to face the fears that had kept him in that corner all along. He felt the stirrings of resolve, a flicker of light in the darkness, urging him to move, to step beyond the threshold of his own limitations. Atlas took a tentative step, the floorboards creaking beneath him, and in that small act, he began to reclaim his agency. The house still loomed large, a daunting presence filled with shadows and whispers, but he was no longer content to remain just an obstacle in the corner. The silence still clung to him, but it also began to shift, opening a space for possibility, for growth, for something more than fear. And in that moment, he understood that the journey had only just begun. The house felt different now, an odd blend of familiarity and estrangement as Atlas settled into a tentative rhythm. The air still carried the weight of unspoken fears, yet something had shifted within him. It was as if the silence had become a living entity, urging him to confront not only the shadows that lurked in the corners, but also the shadows that dwelled within himself. He noticed the dog, a scruffy creature with matted fur and wary eyes, curled up in a corner, mirroring his own stillness. They were both prisoners of their own making, bound by the invisible chains of pretense. Atlas watched the dog for a long moment, captivated by the way it held its body. The creature's muscles were tense, its posture rigid as if ready to spring into action at the slightest provocation. It was a facade they both wore, a mask crafted from pain and disappointment, designed to ward off the world's cruelties. He understood that mask all too well. It was the same one he had donned many years ago, when the scars of betrayal had begun to mar his spirit. They were two beings, each cloaked in a guise of bravado, pretending to be tough, pretending that they were unbreakable. The dog's eyes flicked toward him, a flash of vulnerability breaking through its hardened exterior. In that moment, Atlas felt a connection, a silent acknowledgement of their shared struggle. They were both navigating the treacherous waters of fear, each trapped in a dance of avoidance. He saw the way the dog flinched at sudden movements, the way it held back from reaching out, as if the world was a place filled with sharp edges ready to cut. He recognized that hesitation, for it mirrored his own reluctance to step into the light of vulnerability. Atlas moved slowly, careful not to startle the dog, and knelt down, meeting its gaze. "Hey there, buddy," he murmured, his voice softening in the stillness.
"I get it. I really do."
The dog tilted its head, as if considering the truth of this strange human who sat before it. They were both weary, both nursing wounds that ran deeper than their skin, and both had crafted tough exteriors to shield themselves from further hurt. He reached out a tentative hand, his fingers brushing against the coarse fur. The dog stiffened at first, but gradually, it leaned in, seeking the warmth of a connection it had long denied itself. In that simple moment, Atlas felt the mask they both wore begin to crack, just slightly, allowing a sliver of understanding to seep through. It was a reminder that toughness often masked fear, that bravado was a thin veil draped over vulnerability. They were not as different as they had once believed. What was it that compelled them to wear these masks? Atlas pondered this as he continued to stroke the dog's fur, feeling the tension begin to melt away beneath his fingers. Perhaps it was the fear of being hurt again, the dread of opening up to a world that had, in many ways, betrayed them. Each time they had let their guard down, life had dealt them a harsh blow, leaving behind echoes of pain that lingered long after the initial wound had healed. It was easier to pretend, to act as if they were invincible, than to risk the vulnerability that came with honesty. Yet, as he sat there, Atlas realized that true strength lay not in the facade of toughness but in the courage to be seen, to be known. He watched the dog relax under his touch, its body softening as it leaned into him. In that moment, he understood that they were both ready to take off their masks, to step into the possibility of connection, however fraught with risk it might be. They could choose to be brave together, to face the world not as solitary warriors, but as companions willing to embrace the messiness of life. With a newfound determination, Atlas stood up, glancing at the dog, who now seemed more like a partner than a mere reflection. "Let's face this together," he said softly, feeling a promise form between them. They were two souls navigating the labyrinth of their fears, but for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. The masks would not define them, they would redefine what it meant to be strong. As the sunlight began to seep through the grimy windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, Atlas knew they were ready to step forward, together, into the uncertain light. The night descended like a heavy curtain, engulfing the house in shadows that seemed to thicken with each passing hour. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows and sending a shiver through the walls. Inside, Atlas and the dog huddled together in the dim light, a fragile alliance formed in the wake of their shared revelations. The silence had morphed into something more tangible, a palpable weight that pressed down on them, stirring emotions long buried beneath layers of pretense. Atlas sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, exhaustion creeping into his bones. The day's events had stripped away his defenses, leaving him feeling raw and exposed. He glanced at the dog, whose eyes glimmered in the low light, reflecting a blend of wariness and something else, perhaps a flicker of hope. They were two souls caught in the liminal space between fear and trust, both teetering on the edge of a breakdown that felt inevitable. With each passing moment, the tension in the air thickened, suffocating and electric. Atlas could feel the weight of unspoken words hovering between them, an unsteady bridge yearning to be crossed. The dog shifted closer, its body trembling slightly, and in that small movement, Atlas recognized the shared vulnerability that bound them together. They were both on the precipice of revelation, teetering between the safety of their masks and the risk of genuine connection. As the wind howled outside, Atlas closed his eyes, allowing the sound to wash over him. It echoed the turmoil within, a storm brewing in the depths of his soul. He took a deep breath, the air heavy with the scent of dust and forgotten memories. In that moment, he felt the dam of his emotions begin to crack, the years of hurt and isolation spilling forth like a torrent. He opened his eyes, and there it was, the dog, watching him intently, as if sensing the shift within him. "Why is it so hard?" Atlas whispered, the question hanging in the air like a ghost. "Why is it so hard to just trust?" The admission hung between them, a fragile thread that vibrated with unspoken understanding. The dog's ears perked up, and it moved closer, its warm presence a balm against the chill of the night. In a moment of reckless abandon, Atlas reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he extended it toward the dog. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," he confessed, the words spilling out in a rush. "I just want to feel something real." The dog leaned into his touch, its fur soft and warm beneath his fingers. It was a small gesture, but in that instant, something shifted between them, a spark of trust igniting in the darkness. The dog let out a soft whine, its body vibrating with a mix of relief and anxiety, and Atlas felt the weight of their shared burdens lifting, if only slightly. He continued to stroke the dog's fur, feeling the tension in its muscles begin to ease. In that shared moment of vulnerability, they were no longer two lost souls hiding behind their masks. They were allies, united in their struggle against the shadows that sought to engulf them. As the wind howled outside, a sudden crash echoed through the night, the sound of a branch breaking against the house, and they both jumped. But instead of pulling away, the dog pressed closer, its breathing quickening. Atlas felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him, and he wrapped his arms around the dog, drawing it into his embrace. It was instinctive, born of a sudden need to shield one another from the chaos outside. "Hey, it's okay," he murmured, his voice steady despite the panic rising within him.
"We're safe here. I've got you."
And in that moment, Atlas realized he wasn't just comforting the dog, he was also soothing his own fears. The act of holding the trembling creature felt like a promise, a vow that they would face whatever lay ahead together. Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes, the release of pent-up emotion flowing freely as he buried his face in the dog's fur. The world outside faded away, leaving only the warmth of their shared connection. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered trust, raw and messy, yet beautiful in its
simplicity.
They were two broken beings, learning to piece themselves back together, one touch at a time. As the night wore on, the storm outside began to fade, giving way to a fragile stillness. Within the walls of the house, Atlas felt a shift. Something had changed. He wasn't just a solitary figure lost in fear, he was part of a bond that transcended words, a bond forged in the crucible of shared pain and newfound trust. Together, they would navigate the night of sighs, ready to embrace whatever dawn might bring. In the early light of dawn, the world outside stirred with a gentle vibrancy, a stark contrast to the stillness that had enveloped Atlas for so long. The air, crisp and invigorating, carried the scent of fresh earth and budding flowers, hinting at the beauty that awaited him beyond the confines of his familiar space. It was time for his first walk outside, a moment he had both anticipated and dreaded. Yet, as he stood at the threshold, he felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, an ember of hope igniting within him. Atlas hesitated for a moment, his heart pounding in rhythm with the gentle rustle of leaves. He caught sight of his own reflection in the glass door, a shadow of the dog he once was. Eyes downcast, he had learned to navigate his world with caution, a survivor in a realm that had once felt so welcoming.
But today was different.
Today, he felt the urge to step forward, to reclaim not just his territory, but his very essence. As the door swung open, a rush of fresh air enveloped him, and he took a tentative step outside, the sunlight warming his fur. The ground felt foreign beneath his paws, each blade of grass a new sensation, a new adventure waiting to unfold. With every step, Atlas lifted his head slightly, a subtle shift that spoke volumes of his evolving spirit. The first few moments were filled with uncertainty, his instincts tempting him to retreat, to hide away in the safety of his previous sanctuary. But a deeper voice within urged him onward, whispering promises of liberation and joy. He inhaled deeply, letting the sense of the outside world wash over him. Damp earth, blooming flowers, and the distant laughter of children playing. As he ventured further into the yard, the sunlight poured over him like a golden embrace, illuminating the shadows that had lingered for far too long. Atlas glanced around, taking in the vibrant colors of the flowers, the flutter of butterflies dancing in the air, and the soft chirping of birds perched on the branches above. Each detail ignited a flicker of curiosity, a reminder of the dog he had been, the one who reveled in the simple pleasures of life. There was a long-lost joy waiting to be rediscovered, and he was determined to find it. With newfound resolve, Atlas began to explore, his movements becoming bolder as he navigated the colorful patches of blooms. The petals brushed against his fur, tickling his sides and coaxing a playful spark from within. He paused to investigate a particularly vibrant flower, its scent rich and inviting, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he allowed himself to linger in the moment. He felt the warmth of the sun on his back, the thrill of the breeze ruffling his fur, and the gentle whisper of the world around him. Atlas spotted a butterfly flitting nearby, its delicate wings a kaleidoscope of colors. Intrigued, he instinctively crouched low, his instincts igniting the playful spirit that had long been dormant. With a burst of energy, he darted forward, chasing the mesmerizing creature as it danced through the air. Laughter bubbled up within him, a sound that had been silenced for far too long, and he felt his heart swell with exuberance. Each leap and bound became a testament to his determination to reclaim his dignity, a declaration that he was still very much alive. In those moments, he was no longer just a shadow of his former self. He was Atlas, a spirited dog filled with life and resilience. With every stride, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders, a shedding of the past that had burdened him. The world was vibrant and full of possibilities, and he was ready to embrace it all. He turned to look back at the door he had emerged from, a silent acknowledgement of the journey he had undertaken. It was still a part of him, but it no longer defined him. As he continued to explore, the sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the world in its warm glow. Atlas held his head high, each step more confident than the last. He was a creature of the earth, reclaiming his place in the tapestry of life that unfolded around him. The first walk outside was not just a physical journey, it was a profound awakening, a celebration of his spirit. Atlas was taking the lead, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he was truly free. In the quiet moments of dawn, as the sun began to stretch its golden rays across the horizon, Atlas found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this very moment. The notion of a German shepherd had once been a well-laid plan, a calculated decision grounded in practicality and expectation. It represented a choice made with the head, a selection based on traits admired and values upheld. German shepherds were known for their intelligence, loyalty, and versatility, making them the quintessential companion for families and working environments alike. They were the perfect blend of strength and grace, a breed revered for their ability to bond deeply with humans while standing as guardians. Yet, as Atlas pondered this initial thought, he realized that such a decision, while logical, lacked the essence of true connection. It was a plan, a framework set in place by the desires and aspirations of those who sought to shape his life. But plans can be fickle, they can change with the winds of circumstance and fate. In contrast, the arrival of the Boerboel was not merely an alternative. It was a destiny woven from the threads of serendipity and purpose. This breed, with its imposing stature and gentle heart, resonated with the very core of who Atlas was meant to become. The Boerboel was more than just a breed, it embodied a spirit that aligned with his own. As he reflected on the powerful presence of the Boerboel, Atlas felt a kinship that transcended choice. It was as if the universe had conspired to draw him toward this path, leading him to a truth greater than himself. While the German shepherd had represented a calculated decision, the Boerboel felt like a calling, a deep resonance that echoed within his soul. This breed was known not only for its strength but also for its unwavering loyalty and protective instincts. It was a companion that would stand by his side through trials and triumphs, a partner in the dance of life. Atlas remembered the first time he encountered a Boerboel, its massive frame exuding a regal confidence that captivated him. There was a raw authenticity in its demeanor, a blend of power and gentleness that stirred something deep within him. It wasn't just about the physical attributes, it was the energy, the spirit that radiated from the breed. In that moment, he understood that destiny does not merely present itself as a choice. It envelopes you, wraps you in a cloak of inevitability that feels both comforting and exhilarating. He thought about how Boerboel had entered his life at a time when he was lost, struggling to reclaim his identity after the shadows of his past. It was as if this breed had sensed his need for resilience, for companionship that would not only accept him but also challenge him to rise beyond his limitations. In its presence, Atlas felt the weight of his past begin to lift, replaced by a burgeoning sense of purpose. Boerboel was not just a dog, it was a reflection of his journey, a reminder of the strength he harbored within. As Atlas walked through the familiar spaces of his home, he could see the world with newfound clarity. Boerboel's unwavering loyalty and protective nature had become his guiding light, illuminating a path forward. It was in the quiet moments spent together, those times of shared silence and understanding, that he recognized the profound bond they shared. This was not merely a relationship defined by owner and pet, it was a partnership forged in the fires of transformation. In the end, the difference between the German Shepherd and the Boerboel became a metaphor for the choices we make in life. The German Shepherd was a plan, a decision made through the lens of practicality, while the Boerboel was a destiny, an embrace of the unknown that led to self-discovery. As Atlas continued to reflect, he realized that sometimes the paths we think we should take are not the ones that ultimately fulfill us. Instead, it is the unexpected turns, the serendipitous moments, and the connections we forge that lead us to our true selves. With a heart full of gratitude, Atlas stood tall, ready to embrace the future. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a chosen one, destined to walk alongside a companion who understood him in ways that transcended words. The Boerboel was not just a part of his life, it was the very essence of his journey, a reminder that destiny often knows what we need long before we do. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its warm glow upon them both, Atlas felt a sense of belonging wash over him, a promise of adventure and love waiting just beyond the horizon.
We appreciate you seeing the entire story. You will definitely enjoy the following story if you liked this one. As you may imagine, it's more bizarre and fascinating. To view the next one, click on the image that is currently displayed on the screen.